This is FightFans Radio.
Let's get ready to rumble! Oh my God! Unbelievable! Down goes Frazier! Down goes Frazier! It's time!
You're listening to New Mexico's only mixed martial arts and boxing podcast, The Low Blow, on AdamCombatSports.com and FightFans Radio. It is another episode of The Low Blow on FightFans Radio, SouthwestFight.com, and USCombatSports.com. I am Justin Goodrum, joined by Jorge Hernandez and Will McCleary. How's it going, guys?
Yeah, what's going on, Jay? How you guys doing tonight?
Pretty good, Jay. How you doing?
Not too bad. Today we're going to discuss lots of breaking news concerning local combat sports action, including the Austin Trout fight that's just been made for him to go one-on-one with Miguel Cotto in Madison Square Garden in December. We're going to break down the Jackson's MMA series event going down this weekend at Tingley Coliseum in Albuquerque, New Mexico. But for us, Jorge, we have two special guests.
We do. Ryan Maquiñana of CSN Bay Area and BoxingScene.com. And HBO announcer Harold Letterman joined us. How you guys doing, Ryan?
Hey, we're doing pretty good. How are you?
Doing really well. We're here to basically talk about a fight that's happening out in your neck of the woods. You don't have to travel too far for this. Out in Oakland, Andre Ward will be facing Chad Dawson. What can you tell us about what fight week is like there in your area?
I mean, it's an amazing matchup, compelling one at that. You've got the light heavyweight champion of the world, Chad Dawson, coming all the way from Connecticut, moving down in weight. Not only that, he's going to be facing the super middleweight champion in his hometown of Oakland. You've got two master boxers at the top of their game. They're under 30 years old. Everyone wants to know who that heir apparent is to Floyd Mayweather as far as the next American pay-per-view star. And we might be looking at it with the winner here, especially with the way HBO's been building up this fight.
And how do you see the two guys matching up? You see, Chad Dawson is coming down in weight, something that's unprecedented, and we don't see a guy that top of a level in a weight class come down to challenge another guy that's elite. Both of these guys, Andre probably in the top 5 now, pound for pound, and Chad arguably in the top 15 or 20. How do you see them matching up stylistically, and what are you expecting from this fight?
Well, I'm going to let Harold take this one.
Okay, go ahead, Harold.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear the question.
Mr. Letterman, thank you very much for joining us. This is Jorge Hernandez with The Low Blow. And the question that I did pose to Ryan was, we have two champions, one in Andre Ward, one of the probably top 5 pound for pound, and then you have Chad Dawson, a champion in his own right, coming down to challenge a world-class contender. How do you see these two guys matching up stylistically?
Well, I think it's going to be a very good fight. Chad Dawson's got a big size advantage, and he's a southpaw. And he's a southpaw with a good right hand. You see a lot of southpaws, they just fall with the right hand, They don't have no snap to it. Chad Dawson's got a very good right hand. He can jab real well. He's got good snap with his right hand. He throws a good right hook. If Chad Dawson keeps this fight in the middle of the ring and stays off the ropes, I think he's got a much better chance to win the fight because of the fact that, he's got that big size advantage and he can keep Andre Ward away from him. On the other hand, if Andre Ward gets inside and does his thing like he normally does, the guy hardly ever loses a round, let alone a fight. I mean, he's never lost a fight. And as I say, Andre Ward's incredible. He's beaten some of the top guys in all of boxing, and he very rarely loses a round. So, it's a very compelling fight. It's really very interesting. It's the kind of fight that you say to yourself, you know what? I'm not really sure who's going to win, and I like that. When you go into a fight, you don't want to be saying to yourself, well, this guy's going to win for sure. In Andre Ward, Chad Dawson, we really don't know who's going to win. I mean, Chad is so confident that he's coming to Ward's hometown. He's dropping down to Ward's, super middleweight, 168. He's dropping down to Ward's weight, and he's the most confident guy in the world that he's going to win this fight. So. I'm fascinated by it, especially by Chad Dawson's attitude. He don't care. You ask him, why are you fighting in Oakland? He says, because we sell more tickets in Oakland. You ask him why you fight the 168. He says, well, I make 168 very easily. What do I care? It's amazing. He's got this, I can't be beat attitude, and it's really good, and he's making it very, very interesting for the fans, and I think it's going to turn out to be a great fight. I really believe that we're going to see a lot of this fight fought in the middle of the ring, off the ropes, so that Dawson can use his size advantage, and Andre Ward's going to have to struggle to get inside, to get, in under that big right jab of Chad Dawson's, because, you move in on a guy like Chad Dawson, he'll nail you with a straight left hand, and, he's a southpaw. His power punch is his left hand, so it's going to be an interesting fight.
Hey, Ryan and Howard, it's an honor to have you guys on the show. And just speaking of Chad Dawson, I'm just talking about his move to the super middleweight class. And, either win or lose, I want to ask you guys' opinion. Would this be considered a win-win situation for Chad? Because, as I said, if he wins or loses, he can have other matchups like against Carl Froch or Lucian Boutte or Arthur Abraham, any of the Super 6 contenders. However, in the rematches that Chad Dawson has had with Tarver, Johnson, and Hopkins, guys who are on the tail end of their career, isn't it good to see Chad Dawson fight a young and vibrant fighter?
Let me ask you something. Did you see Chad Dawson fight Thomas Adamek?
That was his most memorable fight to me in terms of the last time that I think Chad Dawson has a lot of natural ability. It's just when you're comparing the compassion between Ward and Dawson and who they have fought recently. I mean, Ward is coming off; he's the Super 6 champion, and we had Dawson just coming to some rough fights.
Yeah, Andre beat some of the best fighters going in the Super 6. I mean, he beat Nikola Tesla, he beat Carl Froch. I mean, he beat some really, really good fighters, and I mean, that's what makes this fight so interesting. I mean, I think it's going to be exciting. Chad Dawson basically has got a new trainer. Let's face reality. He's been through a lot of trainers in his career. He seems very, very happy with John Scully, who's a young guy, a former fighter. John Scully knows how to train. I think him and Chad Dawson mesh very, very well together. They're both Connecticut guys, and I expect to see a really improved, exciting Chad Dawson on Saturday night. I mean, I think he's coming to fight. I don't think he's going to make a boring fight. I think, he's in with a good fighter who's going to press him, and I think it's going to turn out to be a very, very good fight.
Do you think, Harold, that this is Andre Ward's coming out party officially to the world? And do you possibly, within the not too distant future, if, let's say, Julio Cesar Chavez Jr. does defeat Sergio Martinez, a possible fight between Chavez and Andre Ward taking place?
Ryan, I can take that one.
Okay, go ahead.
Discussion with Dan Goosen, who promotes Andre. He'd love that fight. He'd welcome that fight as far as the win of Chavez Martinez facing Andre if he were to win. Clearly, that would be a logical next step as far as the way that both guys are being groomed by HBO as far as pay-per-view attractions, and I would love to see that. I know the fans would love to see that fight. The fact that it's almost sold out over there at the Thompson Mack Center in Las Vegas, I would welcome that fight in a second, and I know that Dan would too.
Hey, Ryan, if you see Chad Dawson winning this fight, do you think that he would continue to shift back and forth between light heavyweight or stay at the super middleweight class? And do you think that the fans would possibly want him to revenge his only loss against Jean Pascal?
A good question. I don't know if it would be good for his body shifting back and forth between 68 and 75. As you know, the last time he made 168 was 6 years ago, and so obviously, we can look at some recent instances of guys moving down in weight, and De La Hoya and Cotto when they fought, and Margarito when they all fought Pacquiao. Clearly, the results weren't up to their standards as how as far as how they wanted to enter the ring. So I mean, who knows how I think time will tell. I think we'll have that question answered on Saturday, whether Chad feels comfortable at 168, whether or not he'll shift back and forth. I don't know about that, but I've talked to Dawson numerous times, and he said he'd love to avenge that loss to Pascal if it arises and the situation is right.
Okay, last question about the Dawson Ward, and then we'll move on to another topic with you, Ryan. Who do you got, and by what type of is a decision, knockout? Who wins this fight?
I got a decision. I got Andre winning a competitive decision, much more competitive than people expect. Andre's such a brilliant fighter, both on the inside and out. I don't think he gets enough credit for his boxing ability. Obviously, people have this stereotype of Andre as this guy on the inside who'll just plot and use his head or whatnot. But I mean, what I see is a guy who who's so tactically brilliant at taking your best weapon away from you. And look how well he fought on the inside against Froch, against Bika. He's so deadly accurate in there, and he can box when he has to box. I mean, the Abraham fight, I thought he just flat out, neutralized anything Abraham could bring to the table offensively. And you know what type of offensive juggernaut Abraham could be when he's at the top of his game. So, I mean, I like Andre. I mean, Chad's so skilled, great combination puncher. Like Harold said, he's got to keep it on the outside and hope to outbox Andre. I just see him getting lured into the type of fight that Andre brings to the table.
Hey, Harold and Ryan, it's Justin Goodrum. I want to ask you about next week's fights. Julio Cesar Chavez fighting Sergio Martinez and Canelo Alvarez fighting Josesito Lopez. Is that good for the sport to see a doubleheader like that on Showtime and HBO, splitting the boxing fans' viewers' attention through two networks? Is that going to be?
I don't like. Yeah, I mean, I don't like it, especially because, I mean, for instance, I won't be able to cover both fights. I'm going to be at Chavez Martinez because I think it's the better main event, even though I believe the Golden Boy card has the better undercard. But yeah, I mean, as far as the fans watching at home, if the times don't conflict, I guess it's okay. But for the fight fan who's coming down to Las Vegas that's paying good money to watch the fight, I don't think it's fair that they're deprived of one fight or the other. And let me see if Harold wants to touch that one.
Hi. Yeah, I don't understand the whole thing. Why they put Canelo up against Sergio Martinez and Julio Cesar Chavez Jr.? I mean, Canelo's a superstar. I don't care what anybody says. That kid can fight. I mean, at 21 years old, he's unbelievable. He can punch. He uses the ring very well. He can move. He's got good defense. I mean, he can do it all. And, to put him against the junior welterweight on the same night where there's a super fight in town, it just doesn't make any sense to me. But I don't make those decisions,
Harold, very quick. Go ahead, Will.
I was going to ask, Harold, what do you think it would be in terms of the comparison between how people are going to determine which fights that they would watch if Canelo was still going to be fighting Paul Williams? Which fight do you think people would most likely be tuned into between the Canelo versus?
If I were a fight fan, I would definitely buy the HBO pay-per-view fight. I think that Sergio Martinez and Julio Cesar Chavez Jr. is definitely a dynamite fight. I mean, Julio makes good fights. Let's face reality. The kid bangs to the body. He leans on you. He uses that weight advantage that he seems to have over any 160-pounder. He makes very exciting fights. On the other hand, Sergio Martinez, we've seen the kind of power he's got. He knocked out Matthew Macklin. He knocked out Paul Williams sensationally. I mean, he's got good power. He's a tough guy to fight. He's a southpaw. He's awkward, a tough guy to land a good shot on. So, it's a very intriguing fight. It really is. And I certainly would want to buy that as opposed to Canelo, against anybody, to be honest with you.
And Harold, very quick question. This weekend, you guys actually saw Gennady Golovkin live in person for the first time here in the United States. How do you think he would fare between Chavez and Martinez? Would he defeat both guys, you think?
Oh, let me tell you something. Gennady Golovkin is scary. I mean, that kid can punch, I mean, here's a kid that comes along and, he's been trained at Big Bear with Abel Sanchez. His English is getting better and better. He tried, you saw the post-fight interview, at least he tried to do it in English. You have no interpreter there. And, I mean, he's a really, really good puncher. We know he knocked out Lucien Boutet in the amateurs, and he beat Andre Durrell in the amateurs. He was a sensational amateur, and, he doesn't have any more contractual problems with Universum over in Germany anymore. He's with, K2, the people that have the Klitschko's, and as he's been traded to California. He loves fighting in the United States, and he's chomping at the bit to fight the winner of Sergio Martinez and Julio Cesar Chavez Jr. I mean, I'm sure he's going to be at the fight, and, he really wants to win it badly. And now we got this, the Australian kid that just won over in Germany with Felix Sturm, what's his name, Daniel Gale, and so he gets thrown into the mix. So the middleweight division is really heating up. It's becoming a very, very interesting division with a lot of good fights out there. I mean, you certainly can't discount Peter Quillen. He does nothing but win, So it's becoming such a good division. I really don't know. Let's say Sergio Martinez wins, for example. I don't know what Lou DiBella's got on his mind. Lou DiBella's the kind of guy that'll say, well, he just won a tough fight. I'm going to put him in an easy fight. On the other hand, he may turn around and say, nope, Sergio's getting a little bit older. We want to fight Golovkin now. So, who knows? I mean, there's so many interesting combinations out there. You wonder who's going to fight who. But, certainly the middleweight division is becoming, I think, the interesting division in all of boxing.
And now if you had to pick a winner between Dawson and Ward and also the Martinez-Chavez fight, how do you line them up, Harold?
I hate to disappoint you guys, but you got to realize I got to keep score in both those fights. So if I pick the winner, you guys should be calling me up Monday morning and saying, Letterman, you were prejudiced to one guy and the other guy going in. How can you score the fight? No, I try to stay neutral. Hold on, I'll put Ryan on. He'll tell you who's going to win.
Thank you, Harold.
And I mean, yeah, Harold's got to stay neutral with that one, but. I got to tell you, if you told me this fight was going down 2 years ago, I would have laughed at you. I probably choked on my bagel would have said Martinez, by execution. But, I mean, man, you got to hand it to Bruce Trampler and Top Rank and the job they've done with building him up, step by step and getting him ready. I mean, the Andy Lee fight was pretty much more or less a preview. Obviously, Martinez is a totally different fighter style-wise, but against the southpaw, we saw the way Chavez could just mow him down, and with that great size advantage he's going to have against Martinez. But I don't know. Okay, I still got to go with skilled, the more skilled fighter Martinez. He's just been amazing. Even though he was down in that Macklin fight, he did what he's done in the last couple of fights and knock guys out late, knock guys out early like he did with Williams. I just think he'll be too fast and too skilled for Chavez. I like Martinez, in a late start, but maybe on his feet. I don't see him laid out like Paul Williams.
Wow.
But, and it's going to be tough for him to win a decision, given all the factors involved. But I like Martinez maybe on cuts or maybe on his feet late in the fight. Call me crazy.
Hey, Ryan, I just want to run this by you. This fight got made pretty recently between Miguel Cotto and Austin Trout. We're pretty familiar with Austin Trout, him being from Las Cruces, New Mexico. What are your impressions of Austin Trout, and can he pull off the upset against Miguel Cotto in December? What are your thoughts on that fight?
Oh, it's definitely possible. Austin has been one of the most slept-on fighters for years, and he's battle-tested. Going to Madison Square Garden is nothing when you've had to go to Mexico twice. I believe you have to go to Panama. He's been through the fire. He's been hungry, for a big fight like this. And then you got to look at Cotto on the other hand. He gave us a great performance against Floyd Mayweather, but we have to step back and think, was that the last gasp? He definitely hasn't been a monster as of late. I mean, he's been taking the Margarito fight. I mean, we were talking about a guy who was already a stoppage waiting to happen with his eye, a faded fighter. Yeah, I mean, I definitely like Trout's chances. I would like to see them both in camp before I start throwing predictions out there. But anyone who thinks that Austin Trout is just coming up there to pick a paycheck is definitely mistaken.
You think that Trout is pretty much is just going to be one of those fights where Trout is going to be able to capitalize on his youth and Miguel more from his experience? And speaking of Miguel's experience, how would you rate Miguel in terms of being in his prime, or is he past it now in terms of all of the battles that he's had?
Miguel Cotto's been past his prime, for a while now. I mean, like I said, that Floyd fight, he definitely showed there's something left in the tank, but he's nowhere near the guy who beat Shane Mosley. That's my opinion. I mean, maybe Harold wants to chime in on that as far as the Austin Trout Miguel Cotto matchup.
Hi. It's very interesting. I don't know if you guys ever been to a fight at Madison Square Garden, but the atmosphere on December the 1st when Miguel Cotto comes to Madison Square Garden is going to be unbelievable. I mean, it's like 18,000 screaming people coming out of the subways to see that fight. I mean, Miguel Cotto is so unbelievably popular at the Garden that it's just going to be a dynamic, electric atmosphere. And Austin Trout's a good fighter. And, he's got that advantage in that he's a southpaw and he can punch a little. And like Ryan said, Miguel Cotto ain't the Miguel Cotto of old, that's for sure. So it's going to be a very interesting night of boxing. I guarantee that.
Harold, just very quick question. How did you and Ryan even team up? This is a strange combination that we're having here.
I don't know. It's funny. We've been planning to get together for the longest time, and every time I was going to come out here. The fight got canceled, so I finally made it.
Wow.
Harold, I was going to ask you real quick, too, in terms of Miguel Cotto. Do you think that he definitely has an advantage in terms of being able to handle the spotlight pressure over Trout?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear it. Miguel Cotto.
Do you think Miguel Cotto has the advantage over Trout in terms of his experience being in a huge spotlight? Do you think that Trout's going to be able to handle this well?
Well, let me put it this way. I think Miguel Cotto's got an advantage because the fans in New York love him. I mean, you know, he's as much a New York fighter as he is a Puerto Rican fighter. It's really unbelievable. His popularity in New York is just beyond belief. And, you know, December the 1st in the Garden, he's really, really going to have that huge crowd behind him. And, you know, they'll support him. They love him. They still think he's Felix Trinidad, you know, and, you know, it's going to be electric there at the Garden. It really will. It's a great place for boxing. I mean, you know, when you got two really good, well-matched fighters, the Garden is just incredible. It's a, you know, most dynamic place in the world to watch a fight. Take it from me. You know, going all the way back, whether it was Maquiñana or Lewis or Emil Griffith or whoever, the Garden is just a dynamite place to fight. And, you know, everybody in the world wants to fight there. Of course, Floyd Mayweather has never fought in New York, but you don't know what he's missing. But I just think that December the 1st, Austin Trout's going to come in really, really good shape. Because, you know, he's a guy that's been fighting, you know, a whole lot of unknowns. And until he fought Delvin Rodriguez, I can honestly say that I didn't know too many opponents that Austin Trout fought, you know. And, you know, he looked good with Delvin Rodriguez, at least I thought. So he probably won at least 11 rounds in that fight. And, you know, now he's coming off a big victory. He's getting a big chance to fight a guy that's, you know, maybe a little bit on the way down. And it's a huge opportunity for Austin Trout, so he's going to be ready. I'm really excited about that December 1st fight.
Harold, before we let you go, this is the last question, and then we'll let you guys get on your way. We're in September, 9 months into the year. What has been your fight of the year so far?
Question. Let me think about it for 1 minute. We had a dynamite fight of the year so far. Good question. Let me think.
We really haven't had anybody fight twice.
Yeah.
Has the performance of the year then been Carl Froch?
Well, Carl Froch is, you know, he's been putting on some amazing performances. Of course, I haven't seen any of his fights live. I watched them all on Showtime, unfortunately. Sure. But, I mean, Carl Froch certainly, you know, is a candidate for fighter of the year, that's for sure, the way he's going, you know. I mean, hold on, Ryan's got a candidate for fighter of the year. Wait a minute.
All right, let's hear it.
Ooh.
But, you know, it's unfortunate we haven't had so many guys fight twice or three times. You know, that's the nature of the business nowadays, I guess. But I think the only guy that comes to my mind, maybe Danny Garcia. You know, he beat Morales. I believe that was earlier this year. Isn't that correct? And
Yes.
And then now he's coming off that big knockout over Amir Khan, and then he's going to get to finish the year with the second helping of Morales. And who knows, with another impressive stoppage, it's, you know, 3 big wins. And, you know, you never know. I'm sure he'd be the front runner for a fight of the year at that point.
And Ryan, you'll be in Vegas next week, man?
I will be in Vegas. Well, you know, it's funny. I never get to run in the Herald. Now I'm going to get to see him twice in 2 weeks.
Let's try to meet up, man. I'll be out there for the Martinez-Chavez fight, too, as a fan, man. We'll check that out. So I'll definitely hit you up. We'll try to meet up.
Well, don't be a stranger, and, you know, thanks for having us on the show.
Well, we won't. Thank you very much for joining us, guys. Again, Ryan Maquiñana and Harold Letterman. Please let Harold know that it was a pleasure to have him on. It was unexpected, but it was a great surprise. So thank you very much for joining us, guys.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you very much.
All right, thanks.
Damn.
Wow. That's
Howard
incredible.
Letterman. And Ryan.
Incredible. Yeah, a pleasure for them both, for both of them joining our show. Just like you said, Jorge, very unexpected. And we're getting to those topics that we talked with our guests later on in the show. But right now, let's start the standing 8 count with our preview of Jackson's MMA series coming up this weekend at Tinley Coliseum in Albuquerque, New Mexico. Jorge, you've done a lot of work on interviewing the fighters. You spent time with them. You've written some undercard previews. I saw some pictures of Tinley Coliseum and how the cage is set up, very Strikeforce-esque, it seems big-time atmosphere. Besides the fights on the card, can you give any insight as to how the show's going to go when that night kicks off?
Yeah, so basically what they're going to have is on the north side of the venue, it's going to be divided in half. So the north part is going to be the main venue for this evening, if you will. It'd be the top half, if you will. The ramp will be coming from the north side down to the middle of the ring. The ring's huge. It's about, I believe it's 30 feet. Also on the opposite side, you're going to have, the DJ mixing those tunes. And, we're familiar with the DJ just in there. So, he's gonna be hitting the turntables there right in the middle. So it's just gonna be a very, very crazy scene the way it's going to be set up. It looks amazing, Justin. Like you said, it's gonna be Strikeforce-esque, and for event, it's not even like a huge nationwide known event, but that's what it kind of feels like, and that's the anticipation that's building up this entire week to it. I mean, you got Frank Gomez scoring off against Mikey Lovato, a huge local contest. But as far as the event itself, it's going to be, on par with, I believe, with Strikeforce, and maybe who knows, might even bypass that because everything is local. Jackson's doesn't have to pay to export any of these things to another city. It's all within the same town. So it's going to be pretty amazing to watch. And the weigh-ins will be tomorrow at Hotel Albuquerque. Again, that's Hotel Albuquerque at 2 p.m. The public is welcome to attend. So it's going to be a really great event. I don't know if people caught my interview with Nick Gonzalez. He's an older fighter. He's one of the coaches at Jackson's MMA. He's been training there for about 6.5 years, and he'll make his professional debut at this event. And if you haven't caught the interview, it's very enlightening and very spiritual. We did it at the top of the Sandia Mountains, and for anyone that's been up there, it's one of the most breathtaking views, not just in the state, but in the entire Southwest. So I'm very excited for this event Saturday night.
Just for outsiders, Jorge, which fighters should people should be keeping their eyes on? Which fighter do you see possibly making a jump to the next level? Not just Strikeforce or UFC, but maybe Bellator or just a regional promotion. Do you see any of these guys on the main card possibly making the transition with the victory?
One name, his name is Hunter Tucker. He's based out of Albuquerque now. He's been here for 3 years. He's out of the Dallas area in Texas. He's a tough guy. This guy's stand-up. This guy's ground. He's enormous for his weight. He's going to be fighting at 155. He's going to be fighting a gentleman by the name of Nate Patterson. But as of right now, keep an eye out for Hunter Tucker. This guy's going to be in Strikeforce or the UFC within the next year and a half. This guy's skills and stand-up is unbelievable, and he's won most of his fights by submission. So definitely he's one guy to keep an eye out on. Also, another guy on the amateur side by the name of Andrew Tennyson. He's only been fighting since college, but this guy's acquired skills in Taekwondo, in karate, in jiu-jitsu. This guy is very well-rounded.
Right on. Just definitely looking forward to that, and that is on Saturday?
Yeah, that is on Saturday night at the Coliseum. There's free parking, so you have no excuse to go. If you can't afford the $25, call me. I'll pay it for you.
Yeah, he'll cover your tab.
All right. Another big news that came up tonight was Will, go ahead. I'm sorry I jumped in there.
Oh no, I was just gonna say I was jumping to the Miguel Cotto and the Austin Trout, man. I'm still just electrified by this fight taking place. So I just wanted to give a quick update on what's going on with that, as we just had with the legendary Howard Letterman and Ryan Maquiñana discussing this. Obviously, Miguel Cotto has taken himself out of the fight with Manny Pacquiao. So, we still don't know who Manny Pacquiao is going to fight. We definitely know it's not going to be Miguel Cotto, because he will, in fact, be facing WBA junior middleweight titleist Austin Trout from New Mexico on December 1st at Madison Square Garden in New York City. So this fight is truly intriguing in its own right, but the winner is definitely going to be positioning himself to fight Saul Canelo Alvarez unless Lopez pulls off another crazy upset, but I really don't see that. But it's a possibility. Trout, I have to give him props. He's definitely, called out Canelo on numerous occasions, so he definitely has the passion to get through Miguel Cotto, and I think he's well prepared, and he's definitely been waiting for a fight of this magnitude to take place. So we're very happy for him and hope that he can continue to move through the junior middleweight division in electrifying style. So everybody's looking forward to that fight. We got a ways to wait, but this is better.
No doubt. Definitely looking forward to that. I'm sure we'll have tons of interviews and coverage on US Combat Sports, southwestfight.com, and our YouTube page at youtube.com/lowblow505. This story just kind of been under the radar, but I think it's a huge deal. Olympic silver medalist Sarah McMahon has signed with Strikeforce. She made a jump from Invicta Fighting Championships to Strikeforce. That's a huge deal. It's a multi-fight deal with the promotion. I think it's rumored that she could debut as early as November 3rd, but has no opponent. Obviously, the match between her and Ronda Rousey is definitely rumored. So definitely looking forward to seeing Sarah McMahon in a Strikeforce cage. And this also has huge implications with Invicta Fighting Championships, because I believe Sarah McMahon was in line for a title shot in that promotion. So it'll be interesting to see how the working relationship between Invicta Fighting Championships and Strikeforce goes on from here. They have a working relationship, but if Strikeforce keeps taking their top stars, that could kind of change the dynamic of how they're sharing fighters. So Sarah McMahon is definitely a name you should go and look her up on YouTube. Very exciting fighter. She is 6-0 in MMA. Definitely on the rise.
And definitely, I bet Erica and yourself freaked out when you heard this news about Jose Aldo being involved in a motorcycle accident there in Rio de Janeiro over the weekend. He apparently walked away, and he'll have no issues, apparently, is what they say, for the UFC 153 title fight that he does have against Frankie Edgar. He's still got a good month, and a couple months before he heals up before this. So
Correct.
Definitely something to look into. It's quite interesting, especially now that the fact that Frankie was coming down in weight to challenge Jose, and we'll see how this does go down here in October, here in the next few weeks.
I'm glad
Actually,
it wasn't
we've been
Paul
corrected.
Williams.
Oh, I'm sorry. We've been corrected by our producer. It's next month.
Oh, it's October. All right. October 13th. Can't wait. Bart Scott voice. Can't wait.
And I'll just say I'm glad it's not another Paul Williams incident. I'm glad he was okay from that.
Thank God for that. Thank God the guys are right as well.
Yeah, I don't think the MMA world could take any kind of massive tragedy. I mean, you already had the UFC 151 mess. I couldn't imagine, Aldo seriously injured in a motorcycle accident. I just couldn't imagine all of the world of MMA would just totally go upside down if that were to happen. So I'm glad he's okay.
All right, go ahead. And Luke Rockhold will also be making his next appearance November 3rd in Strikeforce. How you liking Luke, Justin? You have him up there as one of the best in that weight class?
I'm a huge fan of his, but I'll keep singing the tune, man. I mean, these Strikeforce fights are kind of a waste of time. And him not fighting Jacare is kind of a disgrace, in my opinion. Larkin was impressive, but when he fought King Mo, when it was ruled a no contest, it just does not make any sense after one victory why Larkin automatically gets a title shot. I think Luke Rockhold's very talented, so hopefully he beats Larkin impressively. We can just move on to him facing Jacare again.
What can you tell us about these rumors about Daniel Cormier?
Yeah, he's going to be fighting Frank Mir on that November 3rd card. Again, I'm not to keep repeating myself, but another waste of a time fight. This is, for some reason, Strikeforce wanted their tournament champion, their tournament heavyweight champion, to stick around in Strikeforce for one more fight along with Josh Barnett. So this is the fight we're getting with Daniel Cormier and Frank Mir. It's an exciting bout, but one that, I don't know, doesn't really make any sense. Frank Mir is just coming over to Strikeforce just because Strikeforce needs a high main event for somebody to fight Daniel Cormier. So it doesn't really make any sense. The fight will be semi-exciting. So that's just that, in my opinion. But there is some huge news concerning the huge super fight between George St. Pierre and Anderson Silva. There's a 30-minute interview with Dana White that took place over this past week. Besides addressing the whole John Jones, Dan Henderson controversy, he also talked about a potential St. Pierre Anderson Silva fight happening at a catchweight at 180 pounds. Now, of course, GSP has to beat Carlos Condit, which I think you, Will, and you, Jorge, all agree it's not guaranteed to happen by any means. I know everybody outside of New Mexico thinks GSP is going to destroy Carlos Condit, but I personally think Condit has a huge chance of winning. And as we saw with him fighting Nick Diaz, he could spoil any party. So if, GSP gets past Carlos Condit, it could be at a catchweight at 180 pounds in Cowboy Stadium. So It could be, a very exciting super fight everybody wants to see, but once again, Carlos Condit is portrayed as the bad guy because if he wins, he spoils another super fight. So we'll see what happens on my birthday, November 17th. What happens then?
Yeah, that was real slick, Jay. Hey, Jay, I was going to ask you, too. What do you think about the fight's location at Cowboy Stadium in comparison to, how we had the Manny Pacquiao fights, how he fought Joshua Clottey there, which was pretty disappointing, and his fight with Margarito. You think those UFC numbers are going to blow those away?
That's a really good question because I've been on the mindset that even though people say this will be the biggest fight in MMA history, I don't know. I don't think that I don't want to try to find a word for it. A way to sell this fight is just under 2 records. I just don't think they have enough charisma to pull it off, in my opinion. I just think, they're both. I think St. Pierre's an interesting interview, but he's not a magnetic personality. And with Anderson Silva, he's so mysterious and he doesn't speak English. Rarely at all. So promotion of that fight could be kind of tricky. Maybe, hardcore MMA fans, of course, are going to be into it, but it's a casual MMA audience. I don't know. I just don't see them buying into it. I don't know. I have second thoughts about that fight being a huge sellout. To me, I want to see Anderson Silva versus John Jones. I think that's the fight to make. I think that fight could be a groundbreaking bout for the sport. But, people seem to be into this GSP Silva thing. I'll probably be wrong, but I just don't feel the same excitement as other fans do for this fight.
And also this past weekend, in pretty big boxing news, a star was born, if you ask me, with Gennady Golovkin dismantling Gregor Proska Saturday night on HBO. I mean, we just talked about that with Harold Letterman, and the guy was unbelievable. This guy just destroyed a very good competitor in Gregor Proska. Proska had showed tons of heart. He was down, 5 times, Will, was it? And he just kept coming up, and the referee finally said, that's enough. Now, this is the first time Golovkin has actually fought on U.S. soil. I mean, there's been videos, and people just myths of this guy. Like, he's a freaking Greek god. This guy trains. He doesn't train with anyone in his weight class. He trains with heavyweights.
I saw that.
Chris Arreola has gone into his gym, and he's put these guys down. Just unbelievable that this 160-pounder does have able to drop these 190, 200-pound men, and we saw that his technical skill. This is what he reminded me of. If Lucas Matisse and Robert Guerrero had a baby and trained it for like 20 years, man, that is Golovkin. Do you think just the way he handles his body, he's very central, the way Robert Guerrero is, but the power of Lucas Matisse and just that freight train mentality when it comes to it, because he's both technical and powerful. I don't think we've seen a technical guy with this much power in a long time, Will.
I have to agree, man. I've never even heard of Golovkin to be honest, but I will definitely remember him.
Shame.
Yeah. Hey, I'm being honest, man, but I definitely will not forget him after that performance. I mean, he definitely goes. His technical skills are amazing, and he definitely has the heart, and he most definitely has the power to put lights out in the middleweight division. So this is definitely something that boxing needs, a permanent threat in a division. And I hope, all the guys in the middleweight division are not going to let Saturday night, make them reluctant to take the fight with this guy, because I think that he just is going to, we can have, a chess match, we can have a brawl, but we're definitely going to have an exciting fight, whoever he matches up against.
And also, very quickly, I want to talk about a boxing news that I don't think we went over, and it's probably the most exciting fight, or I guess just one of the more important ones that's happened recently. Felix Strum, who's a middleweight based out of Germany. I don't know if you guys caught this fight. Fought Daniel Gill out of Australia. Gill is 28-1. Felix Strum at the time Saturday was 37-1, and has been awarded some crazy decisions in his hometown there in Germany. And this was for the WBA super middleweight title. Gill, the Australian, looked amazing in this fight. The scores were pretty crazy. One judge had it 8-4 for Strum. The other had it 8-4 for the visiting Gill. And the other judge gave it a split decision to the visitor. It was just incredible to hear the decision being read, and for, finally someone not to get screwed against Felix Strum. Felix Strum's a very, very good fighter. I had that fight even, or Sturm winning by a point. Excuse me, Sturm. I keep saying Strum, but Sturm winning by a point. But it was a very good fight. If you guys didn't catch it, we have it up on our Facebook page there. So make sure you guys catch that one. It was a pretty good fight.
That's a good mention, Jorge. And, just real quickly, the last time I really remember Felix Sturm is when they awarded Oscar De La Hoya the decision when Sturm actually won that fight, in my opinion. But they were trying to set up the De La Hoya and Bernard Hopkins fight. But do you think it's hurting Sturm by not fighting on U.S. soil?
I think he's, man, just based off of what he's making off promotions and pay-per-view money there in Germany, I think he's doing just as well as he would here. But ultimately, for a super mega fight, it's past him now. I mean, at 33 years old and losing this fight on his home turf, I think it's really hurt him. But to possibly see a Felix Sturm and Arthur Abraham fight, now that Abraham is champion once more, that's going to be a huge fight for Europe and Germany. It won't draw as much interest as it would here, but out there, I guarantee you'll get 25,000 people at one of those venues.
Good point.
So, Will, you just had one more story, and you brought this up about the Klitschko's, which shocked me because you hate them with a fiery passion. So, go ahead and break down what made you want to put this story in our account.
Oh man, well let me just clarify. I don't hate the Klitschko's, but I do hate the excitement that they've not been able to bring to the heavyweight division. But I won't fault them entirely because of the contenders. But maybe this documentary will help alter my perspective of the Klitschko's. Regardless of the type of opposition that they faced, they have reigned dominant for over 10 years. And their story, being brothers, is very intriguing. So I'm really looking forward, I have to be honest, more to the documentary than seeing Vitaly Klitschko fight Manuel Char. But maybe we'll get a shocker. But I think definitely this will be a great contribution to, the great work that HBO has done with their documentaries. So, I'm just really looking forward to seeing this. But it just makes me, have to pose the question is, do we need to actually make a documentary about the Klitschko brothers while they're still currently fighting for them to truly be appreciated as heavyweight champions?
Yeah, I want to ask you that because it just seems to me that maybe HBO's in line to have a deal with the Klitschko brothers to air their fights. I know they've been airing on Epix and on ESPN3 or whatever. Maybe they want to promote the Klitschko's on their network because they're going to have more of their fights on HBO. Is that the case? Is there going to be more Klitschko fights on a regular basis on HBO, or this is just kind of a one-time thing just to do a documentary on the Klitschko brothers?
I think it's be a one-time thing for now, but I think it's also, as we mentioned earlier, their political career. I mean, they're both doctors. I think, we're moving on in terms of what they want to do after boxing. So it's definitely going to take a look at their triumphs and possibly position them in different areas of their lives to still be successful after they're done with the sport of boxing. But, these guys are no spring chickens, and they've been dominant for a while. So I don't know how much longer they're going to stick around, and if they're ever going to be able to establish that superstar power in the boxing world.
Yeah,
I have a crazy feeling. I have a crazy feeling that if the player haters ball was real that we saw in Dave Chappelle, Will would be hating on the Klitschko's there. That would be his punchline.
Oh man, it's just,
hey.
It says, the Klitschko's. I mean, like I gotta give them their just dues. They get the job done. They're getting victories. But when's the last time you got pumped up for a Klitschko fight, Jorge?
Man, probably just now, man. Now that you mention it,
I'll tell you, Lennox Lewis when he got screwed with Vitaly. That's the only one I was gonna with the cut. Still maintain he got robbed in that fight. I don't care what anybody says.
Good deal, man.
So let's get into our main event topics. This was a huge story within the past couple of weeks. It kind of caught me off guard in terms of Austin Trout. We had him on the show last week, an interview, and he's in the news again. As we stated earlier, he's going to fight Miguel Cotto in Madison Square Garden December 1st. I want to ask you, Jorge, how does this fight get together, considering Austin Trout's been having trouble finding top-ranked opponent? Was this kind of, this is the worst-case scenario, and it is, found Austin Trout, he has some credibility, and he has a title, let's pick him? Or was it, he's worthy of facing Miguel Cotto?
That's a very good question and a very good point, and something I did discuss with Austin Trout. A couple of hours after the announcement was made, I did have an interview with him, and that's up on our YouTube page if people want to check that out. But what actually went down is you know, the man, the myth, the legend, Al Heyman, the guy no one knows what he looks like, actually made this deal happen. He and Austin's promoter, Greg Cohen, got together and talked to Cotto's camp. Cotto was willing to do it because of the belt. And it's a new guy that Miguel's never faced.
Yeah, I mean, Miguel Cotto, taking on Austin Trout is truly amazing, and just a matchup. I think what we're gonna get. I'm just wondering, are we gonna get more of a technical battle or more of a brawl? I mean, the way that Miguel Cotto has been fighting as of lately has really impressed me in terms of his ability to really give the most technical boxer some problems momentarily, which was Floyd Mayweather. Now, Austin Trout, definitely he has displayed that he can switch back and forth between a brawler and a technical boxer. But Jorge, I want to ask you,
Sure.
What kind of style does Austin Trout have to exemplify to be successful in this Cotto fight?
I think it's a slick style. Stick to what is actually working for you. I think in the Delvin Rodriguez fight, he had moments where he wanted just to prove himself as a superstar and was trying to brawl a few times. That isn't his style. That is his style if he's trying to put away a fight, but he didn't really have Delvin that hurt to try to put away the fight. I think if he remains slick, as he has been for his past 25 fights, he has a very good chance in this fight. I think when the odds come out, he might be a 3-1 underdog. And I think that's going to be too high. I think a lot of people are going to bet against that. One, because of Cotto's age. As Ryan Maquiñana mentioned, he's well past his prime. And think about this, Will. The last 3 fighters that he's actually fought against have been who? Floyd Mayweather. Mm-hmm. It has also been Antonio Margarito and Ricardo Mayorga. These 3 guys are not the flashy, I'm going to move to my left, move to my right, now you see me, now you don't type of fighters. Floyd has slowed down, now and has become a lot more, standing still defensive fighter, and it's successful for him now. When it comes to the 2 other guys, they were pretty much in Cotto's face the whole time. There was not very much technical skill, and, the only guy that has similar style to Austin Trout that Cotto has faced is Yuri Foreman, but Yuri Foreman doesn't have the power. He doesn't have the power that Austin Trout has, or the slickness. Not. So I definitely think that this fight is something that we'll see. And if you go back even another year, Joshua Clottey, he's a stand in front of your face type of guy. I think just the constant movement and punches from different angles from Trout, especially because of the fact that he's lefty, might give Miguel Cotto some problems.
I want to ask. Go ahead.
I just want to say, it's the point that we made earlier in terms of, Harold was elaborating on this Madison Square Garden in terms of all the fans that Cotto is going to have there. Do you think that's going to work for him or against him?
It's going to work for him, I think, because the crowd's going to animate him, and they're going to want to see a knockout. If he knows he's being outboxed by Trout, desperation mode's going to kick in for Miguel Cotto, and I think he's going to go for the knockout, and I think it helps him. But what helps Austin, and he said in the interview that he believes God was setting him up for this moment by having him go to all those foreign countries to fight. Here because he's fought in Mexico 3 times, he's fought in Panama, and he's fought in Canada. In his last 8 fights, 5 of them have been outside of the United States. Think about it. When's the last time you've seen an elite American boxer actually do that, man? So he feels that this is his time to shine, and that God's put him on this trip, to this exact moment, and this is why he's been testing him. Were his words of why this has gone the way it has.
Well, definitely Andre Ward will know that God has more than one son.
Well, I want to ask you guys both this question. Here's the $1 million question. 18,000 crazy Puerto Rican fans in there. Can Austin Trout win a close decision? If the fight's going, if it's even in round 10, is there any way Austin Trout can he could pull out a decision, if the fight's close?
No.
It's a if he dominates, he has to dominate the rounds. This is what I think. Unless it's a cut, I don't think he'll be able to knock Miguel Cotto out. I'll give you that. Miguel Cotto Cotto has a bigger chance of winning this fight by knockout. Do I think Miguel Cotto could win it by decision? I think he's slowed down, man.
Yeah, his legs, man. He's having trouble going into those late rounds, and definitely Austin Trout. You know, he has youth to his advantage, but Austin Trout going into Madison Square Garden, boxing politics can be very dirty, and he is a supreme underdog. Austin Trout has to dominate every round. With that, every time that Cotto lands a mere jab, that crowd is going to be going crazy, and it's been known to affect the judges.
Yeah, and you think about that, about the judging. Cotto isn't coming in with a huge promotion. It's pretty much, his side venture that is organizing this fight. And don't forget that Austin Trout has Al Heyman behind him. Al Heyman's the same guy who manages Floyd Mayweather and some of these other superstars. So he does have that sided with him if we're thinking that the judges are going to be divided. I think his management will do a good job of getting at least some sort of neutral or partial judges that have not either, been based out of that New York area too long or that haven't done too many Cotto fights. So I think that they'll take good care of him. They have the last couple of fights, and look, Al Heyman landed him this huge fight, which is going to be the biggest payday of his career.
Interesting. This is definitely something that we should keep our eyes on. That's going to be on HBO, you think, pay-per-view, or that's going to be Championship Boxing?
Not signed for sure, but they're leaning toward HBO, towards something like a night event, like a regular Saturday night event, non-pay-per-view.
Really? Not pay-per-view. I'm in Madison Square Garden. Wow, okay.
That's why I'm thinking that ultimately they're going to flip it on us. They're going to put a good undercard together and have us order this fight, I think. That's what I personally but, Austin deserves it, man, if he does get it.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll be breaking down that fight, I think, a bunch as the months go by. But I want to get to this weekend's boxing action with Andre Ward and Chad Dawson. I saw that they did a face-to-face. It was different because Max Kellerman wasn't there. I don't know if you guys saw this or not, but they were both just sitting across from each other with no moderator, just asking each other questions. It was kind of awkward. But it just seems very intense rivalry that since between both of these guys. Considering the weight cut or the weight move that Chad Dawson is doing against Andre Ward, how do you think this fight will play out? Because I see a lot of boxing experts saying it's going to be a terrible fight. The undercard's been loaded up to make sure that, at least if the Chad Dawson Andre Ward fight's boring, you get a nice undercard. So do you see this fight being exciting at all? Or, I know Harold Letterman seemed very pumped up for this fight and seemed like he seemed this is going to be a very exciting bout. That's the first, boxing insider, boxing expert I've heard, express excitement towards this bout. Do you guys share in his enthusiasm, or do you think this is going to be a snore fest? We should bring a iPad or Kindle to watch this thing.
I think I'm gonna continue to be optimistic in this fight, but one thing that I really hope that does not happen is Chad Dawson has some decent punching power and definitely some quick hands when he lets him go, but he cannot make the mistake of following around Andre Ward in this fight. He's had a tendency to do that. There's been so many occasions where Chad Dawson can open up, and his natural ability would definitely serve him well, but he's reluctant to do it. So my main concern in this fight with Chad Dawson is, will he be able to make adjustments as Andre Ward does? Because Andre Ward is excellent at making the adjustments in the fights, and he's been fighting the younger guys. Again, I have to reiterate, he is the Super 6 super middleweight champion, and he's been fighting top opposition. Now, again, Dawson has, been fighting. I don't know if I want to go as far as, except for Hopkins in terms of calling these opponents legendary, but he's definitely been, fighting, fighters like Tarver and Johnson, who have made some excellent steps in their careers. But I think a lot of Dawson's momentum that he had going was somewhat diminished by taking these rematches with these older fighters. So taking this fight against Andre Ward, the up-and-coming potential superstar for boxing, is really a good move. But he definitely has to take advantage of this fight. And it's just really hard to pick a favorite in this fight. Both of these guys are really likable. And I noticed on the HBO special that they are really respectful of one another's styles. But I'm wondering, as the fight draws closer, which is this weekend, so it better draw close pretty quick, are they going to get hyped up in a way that we haven't seen them as of recently?
I don't know, man. It should be pretty interesting. These guys are both. I think if you compare both of them, Chad Dawson has a little bit more of a fire in him. Andre Ward is just very confident in his skills, and it's not cocky or arrogant at all. This guy hasn't lost since he was 12 years old. I mean, it's incredible. When you have not, since before you were a teenager, this guy's 28 years old. So in 15 years, he doesn't know what defeat is. And I think now that he's coming into his own and now becoming one of the top, I'd say, 4 fighters in boxing, it's going to be incredible to see how he does perform there in front of his home crowd. He did have, while he did the Super 6 contest, he did have the advantage of fighting in front of his hometown a few times. So this is going to be, probably the biggest fight of his career against a bigger, a lankier guy in Chad Dawson. It's going to be I think it's a very interesting fight. It has potential for something because I don't know how much power Chad will have in that weight class. I mean, out of his 31 victories, he has 17 knockouts. I mean, that's a decent ratio. It's about, it's about 50% there. It's near there, but I'm interested in seeing this fight. I am very interested, especially in seeing what could happen and what's next for Andre Ward. Does this launch him into superstardom, or does a potential fight with Julio Cesar Chavez Jr. do that? So.
You know what, Jorge? You mentioned the fire in Chad Dawson, and I have to disagree with you there. That I think that it's been somewhat extinguished. He definitely, the last time I seen Chad Dawson really pumped up for a fight was against Bernard Hopkins. They had that crazy fiasco, with the weak MMA shoulder slam, and and then after that, Chad Dawson just really seemed to have a fire to defeat Bernard Hopkins. But before Hopkins, the last time that I really have seen Chad Dawson fired up would be, as Howard Letterman mentioned, against Thomas Adamek. So to me, he's definitely he has to get that fire that he had in that Adamek fight against Andre Ward. I agree with you in the fact that, Andre Ward is extremely confident. And one thing that I like about Andre Ward, for his age, I mean, he has some really skillful composure that allows him to, again, make those necessary adjustments to win the fights. But seriously, Dawson has to get that fire and let those hands go.
And you might be right about that, about the fire that he does show. But when he does show that determination, I mean, it's something to behold because he'll let those hands go. And he has several punching. You know what? I think he's a bigger Carl Froch in a way. I don't think he's as talented as Carl Froch, but I think he does pose a threat because he's a bigger guy coming down. But we don't know how drained he's going to be for this fight. So it's going to be very interesting to see. Who do you got, Will, and how?
That's what I was just getting to. I'm going to have to take Andre Ward, and I think that he is going to win by unanimous decision.
All right,
that's what I'm thinking.
I'm going Ward. Wow. I think it's going to be close, man. I think a couple of judges will have it close. I'm guessing around 8-4, but I won't be surprised if one judge has a crazy score of even or like 7-5 for Chad. Andre Ward wins this. I don't think there's a way he loses.
Mm-hmm. We just have 2 more topics, and then we'll get out of here. Lucas Matisse is fighting this weekend on Showtime. For MMA fans, Mauro Ranallo is going to be doing the play-by-play on Showtime Sports, so a little MMA crossover with boxing there. But describe Matisse's style. I've heard if you're an MMA fan, this is the guy you want to see because he fights like an MMA fighter. Is that accurate?
He's pretty rugged, man. If you ask, he's one of my favorite fighters to watch. This guy has a crazy power, and he likes to fight on the inside and just will outbull you, man, is what I think is his style's like. Will?
Yeah, absolutely. This guy's not going anywhere. He's always going to consistently come forward. He's battle tested. He has a solid chin, and like Golovkin, he has knockout power. So most guys, they need to really make critical adjustments in terms of mixing up their technical skills in order to survive against a guy like this. This guy is definitely willing to brawl, and his brawling techniques usually outclass most boxers. They're just not able to deal with his power. So, I hope this Nigerian southpaw is gonna bring more fame than Samuel Peter. I think he was the last Nigerian to really get the spotlight in boxing, and as you know, the Klitschko's got the best of him. So we'll see what happens.
And just to put Lucas Matissa into perspective, the guy's 31-2. His two losses were to Devin Alexander and Zab Judah by split decision in the other guy's hometown or home region. Personally, I think he got robbed with both. I love Devin
experts
Alexander.
say that. Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
I love Devin Alexander, but Lucas Matisse got flat out robbed in that and the Zab Judah fight. So this guy, to me, is a 33-0 fighter and top 10 pound for pound, if you ask me. I mean, he doesn't have the fine technical skills, but this guy will drop you. And just to let people know what he's like, his last fight in June was against Humberto Soto, who's one of my favorite fighters. Humberto Soto had never been down as a pro or a professional. He got knocked out in the 5th round. That's how good and strong this guy is.
Jorge, I was going to ask you real quick. Of course, no boxer, no fighter is invincible. So do you see any weak spot in Batista right now?
Yes, him fighting a very good technical boxer and just being outboxed, just someone dancing around him. If Danny Garcia goes up against him, I think Danny Garcia gets knocked out. If he fights Juan Manuel Marquez, a great counterpuncher, and, has a pretty good chin, I think he would beat him. But if you put Lucas Matisse against the other guys, this division is loaded, if you remember. Amir Khan's in here. Amir Khan now, he's suspect to a glass chin. But Mike Alvarado or Brandon Rios, if you fight fire with fire, I think ultimately Matisse will come out victorious. But Juan Manuel Marquez, the very technical fighter and very good defensive fighter, is the only one I think that can beat Matisse. But, Juan Manuel Marquez is about to turn 40 years old. So who knows how old age will affect him in that fight. But I think just a great technical fighter will defeat him.
Mm-hmm.
Good point.
Just one last topic, and then we'll head off. Julio Cesar Chavez Jr. is fighting Sergio Martinez next weekend. Jorge, you're going to that fight, and next week we'll break that fight down from a ring perspective. But I want to ask you from a television perspective, and particularly the face-off. We kind of talked about it with our guest earlier tonight. I want to ask both of you. I got the sense that Sergio Martinez is kind of underestimating Chavez Jr., really kind of disrespecting him and thinking that he does not belong in the top elite class of boxing. So do you think this could hurt Martinez when they step into the ring next Saturday night?
Martinez, his attitude has really been transformative in terms of how he usually acts in boxing. And he doesn't like Chavez. I don't think that this is a show, and I think that, I don't know in terms of underestimating him, but I think that, he believes that Chavez Jr. has definitely been privileged, and he doesn't deserve to call himself a champion. Now, the only way that I see that Martinez is really underestimating Chavez Jr. is if, in fact, that he lets his emotions get the best of him, because normally he's been really cool, calm, and collect in the ring. I mean, he's a little flashy. He's definitely extremely competitive in the ring. I mean, he definitely is the type of fighter who wants to make sure that he wins every round. But, his emotions are running high in this fight, and, that definitely might be a chink in his armor. So I think that there's some real live animosity going on between these two fighters. I don't think it's for show at all, and it's gonna play out with fire, I believe.
And I agree with you, Will. It's going to be interesting to see how Sergio Martinez, who's probably the third best boxer in the world after Floyd Mayweather and Manny Pacquiao, see how he does, how well he is composed within that ring, especially with all this anger that he has and resentment he has toward Julio Cesar Chavez Jr., who he feels has been babied and pampered to a world title because of the fact of who his father is, the greatest Mexican boxer of all time. So It's very interesting to see how that's going to play out. But I think the confidence that's coming out of Sergio, I think it's just driven him a new gear to actually fight and to actually train. I think he's just going harder, and it might be the drive that he's needed, because his last two fights against Macklin and Barker, he struggled just a little bit, if you don't remember. I mean, the cards were close. That Barker, one judge had it pretty spread out from what I remember, but he's struggled a little bit in those fights, but I think this just ultimately just give him the drive that he needed to ultimately be a top top 3 contender in the world for that belt. And it's just a huge fight, and I'm glad it's happening at this time when it is happening. But, we'll, I guess, break down and give our predictions next week. I wanted to ask you guys this. Both guys are primarily Spanish-speaking. They speak little English. Has the 24/7 or the face-off turned you off because of that, by any chance?
I'm just wondering how Max is. Where's the interpreter here? Does Max Kellerman speak Spanish?
There's an IFB in both the fighters' ears. So Kellerman speaks English, and then there's an interpreter in the IFB that will translate it to Spanish
at the same time.
At the same time.
Does a little bit better instead of editing the footage down, because you're letting it play out in real life.
Exactly.
For someone's buddy to translate, or someone to transcribe this information for you. It's happening as it is, so it's a lot more. I guess it's a lot more genuine. And you saw that dislike between both the guys come in, but make sure to check out that 24/7 series, just because that kicked off last week, and it's interesting that Julio now seems like the bad guy because the amount of smack he's talking on the show.
It's good to see, though.
Definitely looking forward to next week. Don't forget, there's the Vitaly Klitschko fight this weekend, and also K1 from Los Angeles streaming on Spike.com. That kicks off, so plenty of combat sports option to keep you busy this weekend. That's going to pretty much conclude our show. Get a hold of FightFans through Facebook.com/FightFansRadio, Twitter through @FightFansRadio, YouTube.com/FightFansRadio. That has our show along with the rest of the Fight Fans Radio network family, and also Ustream.tv/channel/FightFans Radio. You can get in touch with us through @LowBlow, our email, where we take any hate mail, criticism. We'll take it all through lowblow505@gmail.com. We're available on the Stitcher Radio app and iTunes. And don't forget our YouTube page. If you have not seen it, the Holly Holm John Jones sparring video, that's still going strong. That's pretty close to 350,000 views on YouTube, so please check that out. Jorge got that for us, I think, about almost a year ago, right? And it's still going strong.
It's about a year ago, and it's still taking off. I mean, it's one of our few videos that did go viral, but, I mean, it's driving enough interest and crazy comments, man. If you haven't,
it is. I mean, I have seen it. It's crazy, man.
Racism, all kinds of isms, man. And also, you mentioned hate mail. Don't forget, we're still minorities in this country, Jay. We don't want too much hate mail.
That's true. Concerning combat sports, not race. So I think that's going to conclude our show. For Will and Jorge, I'm Justin Goodrum, and we'll see you next week.
Peace.